One of the most requested things on this channel is making an update to the Dungeons Gear Guide that we made a few months ago, and we didn't really want to do it, because nothing much changed. I, of course, completely forgot that dungeons floors now have level requirements, and that the requirements to use armor sets have been changed too, and that the strength nerf happened, and that master mode is a thing now, and all in all, the old guide isn't of much worth anymore, despite the fact it's been used by 300,000 people at this point. Anyway, continuing with the guide, this video will have something for every single class, but this is not a guide of which class you should play, and I don't really know how future balance changes will affect anything. So I'm just going to include a guide for all of the classes, and it's up to you to figure out what you wanna play or what your friends want you to play. As usual, all the information will be in the form of a cool infographic, so you can pause the video and absorb all the info you need. Also, the things in this guide are for your first completion of each floor. If you're looking for ways to grind the floor after you already completed the floor once, simply skip to the next Dungeons floor guide, as that will have a list of everything you had already unlocked and can use to grind a previous floor. I spent 20 minutes trying to see where I can properly fit a sub-button plug, and I couldn't find anywhere to put it, so I'm just gonna toss it in here. Please subscribe if you found the info in this video helpful. Thank you. So the entrance floor is pretty easy, and I've made a beginner's guide where I've gone from a new profile to beating this floor in the space of 2 days, and I've left a link to that in the description. This floor is pretty easy though, and you can get through it in basically any kind of gear, as long as you have good enough tank and a healer with you. There's some new armor sets coming out with the new community project very soon too, and the higher range of those will probably be good enough to take on this floor as well. And when those do come out, I'll have a video about that on our second channel, which you can also get to in the description, but that's enough self-promo for one video. Let's keep going. As a general rule, each dungeon floor is about twice as difficult as the previous one, and given how easy entrance floor is, floor 1 isn't that much harder either, and you can probably get away with whatever you use to finish the entrance. This also gives you access to the wonderful world of cheap dungeon sets, which are really strong, especially the Rotten armor with its strength, that which is higher than that of strong dragon armor, and you can probably just pick these up by playing the entrance floor. Not to mention, the stats on these also get boosted every single time you level up your catacombs level, so it grows with you. Floor 2 is also pretty similar to Floor 1, although players with lower skill levels may struggle with their normal sets. It's probably easier to just improve your combat skill than it is to grind out catacombs levels at this stage. Nonetheless, advice is basically the same as the previous floor, although mages do get access to a new reforge for their armor and a new weapon in the form of necrotic and bonzo staff. Every other class though, you're just kinda stuck with the same old stuff as always, but things are gonna get more interesting later, I promise. Floor 3 is also more of the same old stuff, because apparently, adding interesting things to early floors is illegal. The biggest new thing here is the adaptive blade, which is probably better than most early or mid-game swords out there, and is also a useful defensive option for healers and tanks. And chest plates can also get the loving reforge for mages, which gives them some defense and more magic damage, which is usually better than necrotic for damage. Finally though, at floor 4, there's something new for just about everyone. This is also the first floor where your catacombs level is gonna be high enough that you can start dungeonizing items. This is where you can use your saved up essence to turn your normal average items into an item that gains a 50% stat boost and also gains the stats from your catacombs level. However, these items have a catacombs level requirement of their own, so I will show you the ones that you can actually use at that level, and items that have been turned into dungeons items will be shown in gold text of the infographic. Anyway, the previous floor gave you access to the adaptive armor, and as a result, you can use this to beat floor 4, which in my opinion is a massive step up from the difficulty of floor 3, and this armor is the best option for basically every class here. You can also dungeonize a leaping sword and a runan's bow, which is good for berserkers and archers respectively. Floor 5 has a couple of interesting items for things too. One of the main things here is that you actually get spirit boots, which have higher base stats than adaptive boots, and are usually worth using instead of adaptive boots. You also get access to the Spirit Sword for Berserkers, Spirit Bow for Archers, and Spirit Scepter for Mages. Archers get Bone Morangs too, and since the last video, these have died in price, down to a mere 3 million coins, largely because they were nerfed to only deal a quarter of their damage and to not do bonus return damage unless you keep holding the item once thrown. This doesn't change the fact that Bone Morangs are still really good. Just because they do less damage, it doesn't mean the utility of piercing up to 10 enemies 13 blocks in front of you is lost. And chances are, the damage you deal with just one of these is overkill enough that you would still use them to clear rooms or kill bosses reasonably effectively. Nothing too interesting on the dungeonized item front here though. Going into floor 6, you're gonna want something tanky to survive the first phase of the boss, and it's recommended that you have a separate armor set or at the very least a bonzo mask to wear during this phase. And because I'm lazy, just copy what it says in the tank or healer section for surviving the first phase. Aside from that, you get access to the Shaded Reforge at this level, which is a good reforge for your accessories if you're an archer or a berserker, and if you're feeling lazy. It's especially good now that all you have to do is balance out strength and crit damage to optimize your stats, instead of some funky math with the exponential strength scaling. There is also the Shadow Assassin armor, which is really solid, and the Livid Dagger and Shadow Fury, which are also pretty good weapons, although generally speaking, the Shadow Fury is the better pick. For dungeonizing items, you get access to a ton of things here too, including all of the Dragon armor sets and Perfect Tier 10, which may or may not be useful to you, depending on what you're doing. The end of your journey arrives at floor 7, and with it comes some fancy, expensive swords, like Hyperion's and Storm armor, but not yet, because you haven't actually beaten it yet. Going into floor 7, you're gonna have access to Necromancer's armor from the previous floor, which is very niche, but is good for defense. And you're also gonna have access to the Giant Sword, which is nothing short of overpowered at the time of releasing this video. If you've already beaten the floor once, you can use the One for All ultimate enchantment on your weapons too, which is also the current meta. You can also use it if you haven't beaten the floor, but I'm trying to keep this Iron Man friendly. And that's the end of the normal floors. However, if you're a sane person, the furthest you'll go is grinding out floor 7 to try and get Necron's handle. And for that, you're gonna want gear that maximizes the area you can deal damage in, and not necessarily the amount of damage you do, as chances are, you're probably going to be one-hitting everything regardless of your damage. As a result, this guide is for experienced players who can comfortably survive the floor and is not something to jump for as soon as you finish floor 7 once. There's some important things here, like the Axe of the Shredded, which is surprisingly good at clearing out rooms with its ability, the Wither Sword with their Wither Impact ability, the Wither armor sets, and newest of all, the Terminator Bow, which is suitable for everyone fortunate to have a mere 2.6% of Swavy's net worth ready to drop on a bow. Finally, there is Master Mode. I don't actually play Master Mode myself. I find it pretty boring, but if you want to take on the challenge or you just have nothing better to be doing, the setup is going to be largely the same for all the Master floors. The key thing here is survivability. You need a good mix of high damage and high defense to take on fairly high damage hits from mobs that would otherwise not be a threat to you. This varies from players to player, but you will need to make some sacrifices, like using pieces of Goldor armor or using an Astria instead of a Valkyrie or Hyperion purely for the defense boost it gives you. Hopefully this guide has been helpful. If you enjoyed it and want more helpful content, be sure to check out our other guides about dungeons. Or don't, I'm not your boss.